We are live. How's everyone doing? It's been a while. Today we have a very exciting day for Mirrorless Monday. We have a very experienced wedding photographer, and not just a wedding photographer, just an amazing photographer in general. We have Neil van Niekerk here joining us today for the live stream. And yeah, thanks for joining us, Neil. How's it going?
Pretty well. It's always on top of the world.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, you get your weddings, your wedding photographs are amazing, and it's honestly a treat to have you here and to have everyone join us here right now, and to really join us here on an open discussion in terms of wedding photography and getting some experience from someone as experienced as yourself to join us.
Oh yeah, absolute pleasure.
Yeah, so we have, I highly welcome anyone to ask any questions. Right now we're going to be running through Adorama's new platform. We're using YouTube now, so you guys can join us here, and I can see chat here just fine. So again, I'll be monitoring that, but it's going to be in the same landing page that you're brought to. And if you want to scroll down and check out some of the gear we're using, you're more than welcome to, and actually see some of the previous live streams that we've had here as well. But yeah, Neil, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, a bit of history. I'm obviously not from New Jersey, so you can hear from the accent. I'm originally from South Africa. We emigrated in 2000. I used to work as a television broadcast engineering tech, and we emigrated on my wife's work permit. So for 3 years, I was a stay-at-home dad while I didn't have a work permit. And I did get my work permit. I thought, do I want to go back into broadcasting? Yeah, I'm a couple of years out of date. It's a different system, or do what I love. So I started working for a wedding studio. And also important is in the years that I was a stay-at-home dad and didn't have work, I started writing stuff and putting on a website, pretty much a blog before blogs were blogs.
Yeah.
Just putting out a lot of information, photography. And that eventually snowballed into 5 books, videos, just a whole bunch of stuff. And it just kind of, doing that instead of a more traditional wedding photographer approach kind of elevated me above the general ranks. So it's been an interesting career. And at the moment I have a studio. I've had a studio for the past 10 years. I started branching out more into commercial work, corporate work, product photography, headshots, not just purely so wedding centric. So it's really diverse. The only thing I don't photograph often are babies, because babies are tough.
They're tough.
Respect.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a totally different type of photography, especially. I did a workshop once with that, and the major priority of that was just keeping them asleep and keeping them warm and keeping them comfortable. And I was like, man, that's a lot of work.
For that, yeah. So what I was about to say, I lost my own train of thought here.
Well, you've had your studio there for 10 years, you know, and yeah, I met you here in New Jersey, and I mean, I got to work, you know, with you on a few things, you know, at least for live streams. So I'm happy for you to join me here for an Adorama live stream, and it's really cool to have you back and like hang out with you and just get a chance to see what's new, because I haven't talked to you in a while actually. So yeah, so I mean, I'm really excited to see what's new, what kind of gear you're using. I actually have your wedding portfolio here if you want me to maybe go through some of your gallery, and if you want to talk about any of these photographs.
No, if anybody's curious about any of the photographs, I'd gladly answer questions.
Yeah, I'll keep this playing in the background while we're chatting.
And as anybody could see looking at my wedding portfolio, is that the lighting varies. It's available light, it's video light, it's on-camera flash, it's off-camera flash. It's really the whole gamut of lighting. It's whatever I need to use to make the photographs look good.
Yeah.
I'm not a strict fanatic about one specific train of thought. It's
Absolutely.
whatever I use to make it look good.
Yeah, I mean, wedding photography, you have to be a lot of different types of photographers, just to do the job. Not just event photography, but you're doing portrait photography and product photography, for just to name a few, right?
I would insist that your best wedding photographers are really versatile. They're really amongst the best of photographers you can get, simply because they have to. It's project management, it is people skills, it is lighting, it is a whole range of things that you have to be very good at to be good at being a wedding photographer. So even though I think a lot of people regard wedding photography to be the bottom rung of the ladder, there's a lot of skills that come into play to be a really good wedding photographer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, from friends who have gotten married, I've heard some rough situations where the photographer wasn't friendly or anything like that, and it definitely like ruins the relationship, at least for recommendations and stuff like that. I feel like I always bring like Cliff Bars or something to make sure the bride's okay and she's not, it's a long day.
Stop everyone from being hungry.
Yeah, exactly. Here's something to nibble on. We're cool. Everything's fine. But yeah, these are amazing photographs. What gear are you using nowadays for your work?
There's a bit of a story here. I'm a bit of a strange case. I use Sony A1 bodies, two A1 bodies, and I have
Awesome.
two A bodies, and I have two A9 bodies. That's my main kit. But I would say the weird thing about how I use it is I don't change lenses. So on 4 of my cameras, I don't change lenses because I can't afford to get dust on the sensor. So
Right.
the sensor is meticulously cleaned, lens is slapped on, and the lens just very, very rarely comes off. It has to be a bit of a crisis for the lens to come off. And then I have 2 cameras that I change lenses on as needed. So 2 A1 bodies, a 16-35 and a 24-70,
Nice.
which is, I would say, 90% of my work. And then an A9 II with a 70-200 2.8, the new GM2,
Very nice.
which is spectacular. This is just such an amazing lens.
Oh yeah. When it comes to, I mean, I'm sure you felt the weight difference when we reduced the price, or not the price, but the weight by like practically a whole pound for your weddings.
They dropped the weight. And then other things I like is the declicked aperture, but also the lens doesn't suck air, because a lot of the big lenses, when you zoom, the whole lens moves in and out, and this just sucks dust into the lens. And this one doesn't. It's all internal zooming.
Yeah.
And the zoom is so smooth. It's just the perfect lens. I just love it.
Yeah, I actually didn't even think about that. And even with the declicking, is that primarily for photographs so you don't like bother the wedding procession, or?
I use a declicked aperture for video because levels might change a little bit, but I don't want the light levels to click in discrete jumps.
Right.
So clicked aperture, you can gradually fade your aperture wider or smaller to kind of compensate for light levels that change without it being noticeable. But a clicking aperture, you'll see that clicks tick, tick, tick as you change your aperture.
Right.
So it's a lot more transparent.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean the 7200. Yeah, I'm happy you're enjoying it. Did you get a chance to try out the new 24-70 version 2?
The 24-70. This is the one we're looking at right now. That's the main lens on the other A1.
Nice. There you go. That's what you're using.
webcam. So I can't show it to you, but it's definitely there. And
Nice.
I upgraded from the version 1 to the version 2 instantly, and it's smaller, more compact, a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, I really love the lens. It was an immediate upgrade for me.
Awesome.
I use the 3 main zooms: 24-70, 16-35, 7-200, and then on events I bring the 4 main primes as well: 35 1.4, 50 1.4, 85 1.4, and the 135 1.8.
Nice. Yeah. 135 1.8.
I use the prime lenses on the 2 A9s. The A9 II, the A9 II, the mechanical shutter was improved on the A9, so it makes flash photography a lot more pleasant on the A9 II than on the A9. So the A9s are used as available light only cameras.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, so that means you have pretty much different schools of thought. You actually have both, because I know some wedding photographers, they only have zoom lenses or they only have prime lenses.
I don't buy into that philosophy. If anybody says zoom prime lenses are sharper than zoom lenses, they really haven't used modern zoom lenses. The latest zoom lenses are ridiculously sharp at 2.8. So I would fight anyone that says zoom lenses aren't as sharp as prime lenses.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, here's something controversial. If I have a second shooter and they tell me they shoot primes only, I steel myself for photographs that aren't properly composed, either too wide or too tight. And I will hurt anybody that says you can zoom with your feet. You cannot zoom with your feet, because if you zoom with your feet, you change your perspective. There's no zooming with.
Yeah, because the lens compression and everything else changes completely.
I need to go on a rant here. Sorry, I'm interrupting you, but I need to go on a rant here. The main problem when using primes in a fluid situation like a wedding is, let's say, a wedding reception. You've got your frame, you want to frame two people just hugging in a candid shot, and they call in three of their friends. Where do you go? You can't step back. Your back is against the table. What do you do now? Swap lenses? Okay. You're going to lose time. You're not going to make it. Zoom lens, you zoom wider. Boom, done. You got the shot. It's just a lot more practical at a wedding to use zoom lenses than using prime lenses. And I can tell you now that if somebody shoots prime lenses only, their compositions are a little off. A little too wide, a little too tight so often, because you can't move.
Right, exactly. Like, there's a lot of times where I wish I had more reach, but whenever I want to play around, I've taken shots with like the 51.2 just because it has its own specific style, just like the 135-1.8. I mean the 51.4, the 85 1.4. I mean, this is such a beautiful lens. I love it. It gives a specific look. I had the 85 1.8, which is a crazy sharp lens. And then I had a workshop where somebody shot with the 85 1.4 and I was shooting 85 1.8, and the photographs had a different look to them. More than just the wider aperture, there was a completely different look to them because of the lens. I don't know what it was, and I thought, I need to upgrade, I need to get this lens. So absolutely, when a prime lens is useful for the wide aperture or whatever it might be, absolute prime lens, but zoom lenses make my life much easier. Oh yeah, absolutely, especially with what they're capable of now with low light, you know. I'm gonna go, we did, with everyone signing up, we do have some questions that were asked during the sign up for those guys, and I do have a few questions if you don't mind me shooting them off for you.
Absolutely, that's why we're here.
Awesome. And honestly, if you guys have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask them. Don't be shy about your username. Mine says Pocky Party because I wasn't aware that I need to go set it up. Yeah, Pocky Party. It's a snack that I liked, and that was my call sign when I was in the military. They just called me Pocky, and I was like, okay. I ate it too much. But yeah, don't be shy to ask questions, and let me pull some up here right now for us. All right, cool. So this question's coming from Veronica. She says, weddings can be a lot of pressure. Is there any kinds of photo shoots we can do beforehand that can prepare us for this type of shoot? Nice question, Veronica.
I think the pressure with weddings come in that the timeline is very often compressed. Your people skills have to be great. I would say project management would have to be great, but I think where the pressure really comes in is in posing people. You have to imaginatively pose your bride and groom and bridal party. And that's something you can prepare beforehand with a stylized shoot or photographing models and getting used to posing them. And that's another thing where I have a issue with when people say they are photojournalistic only. You're missing out if you limit yourself like that. You have to pose the people during the romantic portrait session, and your couple has given you de facto permission to pose them. So you have to be bold there and take charge and pose them and make them look as good as they need to be. So I think the one way you can prepare yourself is just have the confidence of having half a dozen or 8 or 10 different poses that you know will work for the bride and groom, and you can quickly run through it, because things get a little out of control, time gets limited, and you have 5 minutes for the bride and groom, and you can just very briefly hammer out a few shots very quickly and give them diversity in the photographs. So I think that'll take a lot of the pressure out, is just simply practicing posing and photographing people. And a big tip that I would give in photographing a bride and groom is shoot wide, shoot medium, shoot tight, shoot vertical, shoot horizontal, change your position, shoot from lower down, go to shoot at an angle from them. So within 2-3 minutes, you can really get a wide range of photographs, and then you select a few of them. You don't have to select everything in the final call, because you're going to repeat that process with the next setup where you pose them wide, tight, medium, low, high, from an angle, vertical, horizontal, and you get the variety of shots very, very quickly. And again, you just pick a few shots of those. And this is the way you repeat with the 6, 7, 8 setups you do. And very quickly have a wide range of photographs, because you'll take a wide, low shot from one setup, side view from that setup, and then next setup different. So this gives you a variety of photographs very quickly.
Absolutely.
And that comes back to the previous one, yeah. That I think it'll take away a lot of the pressure, having that repertoire in the back of your mind that you can just quickly refer to.
Absolutely. I think that was a great point where you said to shoot in those different angles, wide, medium, tight, because those are 3 completely different photographs that you're getting. And all you did was just either, the 24-70, you could do pretty much all 3 of those.
And even a bride cuddling in with a groom, tight on their hands, tight on the bride, so the groom is just part of the frame, and then wider where you have the bride and the groom. Shoot an angle so you get more of the bride and over the groom's shoulder. You can really move around, not just get fixed in one position.
Exactly.
And shoot horizontal, eye view.
Absolutely. Where do you find your kind of inspirations from when it comes to posing? Because I think that's one of the most difficult things, is to find poses, for sure.
Steal ideas. You're in Facebook groups. Just steal ideas from other people and build up on that. And even in trying to copy a specific pose or a specific idea, it will be different, because the day is different, the lighting is different, the people look different, their body types are different, their levels of awkwardness are different, your photographs will look different. But as I said, just build up a repertoire where you can go, okay, that idea, and work with it.
Absolutely.
And it will look different.
Absolutely. Great question, Veronica. Thanks for asking. We actually have someone in chat here from N-Tran. She said, that person said, hi Neil, just wonder if you still use either Nikon or Canon gear. Thanks.
I still have 5 Nikon cameras that I use for time-lapse photography, and it'll be very expensive for me to upgrade from that to a different system, because all the auxiliary pieces, the cables, the connectors, the timers, all Nikon related. But in terms of my event photography, it's all Sony. And the reason why I shifted to Sony is, at some point, as much as I love Nikon, at some point I needed a 4K capable camera. I needed an f2.8 6-35 that can take filters, because we shoot video, you use neutral density filters. So Sony had just jumped far ahead of both Nikon and Canon at the time. And reluctantly at first, I jumped to Nikon, to Sony, and very quickly realized the lenses are amazing. The Sony lenses are just incredible. And then you get used to the bodies, you get used to the controls, get used to the menus, and the image quality out of the cameras are fantastic. And then the A1 is something very magical about the sensor in this camera.
Absolutely.
Something I should mention as an aside with the A1, it's 50 megapixels, which is an insane size. But they also allow you to go to medium raw, which is 21 megapixels, or I can go to crop sensor, which is 21 megapixels. So a 24-70 becomes a de facto 35 to 105, which is a nice range. Or you just shoot medium raw, and 21 megapixels. Because something like the groom adjusting his bow tie, you do not need 50 megapixels of that scene. 21 megapixels is already overkill for detail shots. So with a wedding, I will shoot most of it 21 megapixels. Families and formals of the bride and groom, and the bridal party especially, I'll shoot 50 megapixels because then the high resolution makes sense. But the rest of the time, I shoot at medium raw, 21 megapixels, and then for reach, the A9 II is 24 megapixels, which is a lot of pixels.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Be it off tangent.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that's why you have that wonderful blog, right? But yeah, I mean, that's a great point as well, because for the 50 megapixels, I gravitated towards the A1 when it came to, those photographs is something they might want to print larger. And so those are the ones that make sense. But when it was reception, I went with the A7S III just because I didn't want to use a strobe, and I wanted to do the 50 millimeter f1.2. I think I was getting 1/500th of a second in those shots, and just because it's
the high ISO noise in the A7S III is ridiculously good.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, 21 megapixels, and then when you're playing that against or side by side with the A9 II, that's a perfect combo, and it's not too far off from each other, and you still have that stack sensor.
And I was originally concerned about the high resolution of the A1, that the high ISO noise would be terrible. Until I tested it, and 3200 ISO, just dial the noise reduction up a little bit, is remarkably clean. So I have no hesitation shooting 3200 ISO on the A1, which blew my mind, because I came from the Nikon D5, which was incredible in terms of high ISO noise. And going to a 50 megapixel camera, I'm like really shocked at how insanely good the sensor is. So I've lost my reservations about, high resolution camera gives you a lot more noise.
Right.
They did something with this camera that I really love.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that with cameras like the A7R5. When you increase that kind of noise, it's actually really well controlled. But the A1 that's a camera that I think can do literally anything you throw at it.
And I briefly bought the A7R4 because I wanted to shoot time lapse, 8K time lapses, and I wanted a high resolution camera. So I bought the A7R4. And the A1, I would say, is about a stop better in terms of the high ISO noise than the A7R4.
Oh, wow.
So I sold the A7R4 and bought another A1 simply because the sensor is that good.
Oh wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So they need to work for Sony. So back to the question, Sony and Nikon, I use Nikon for specific things, time lapses, simply because I have the systems, it's ready. Events, it's all Sony.
Gotcha. And great question.
The main thing was originally that they were ahead of the curve, and now it's the Sony lenses are just, I don't think there's anything better than Sony lenses.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, now there's...
I have to dive here. This is for me still something that's crazy, because I came from Pentax, then went Nikon, and then went Canon, then Nikon again. So I've shot with everything, and I mean the main brands way back: Minolta, Pentax, Nikon, Canon. There was no Sony. And when was it? The 1980s somewhere. Sony came out with the digital cameras, and Sony. I mean, they did television broadcasting equipment and highly regarded there, but in terms of photography gear, Sony. And somehow they came up from nowhere with absolutely amazing technology, and I strongly believe they are at the forefront. Everybody else is catching up to Sony.
Yeah, well, nowadays we have 72 lenses available, so luckily with the E-mount that we've had for a while, we just came out with the 72nd, the 50mm f1.4, which is available for pre-order, and it's a G Master lens as well. So yeah.
So I mentioned, just as an aside here, my favorite lens that I don't use at all or don't use often is the 100mm STF f2.8 lens. It is such a specialized niche lens that it rarely sees use, but it's my favorite lens because I talk about Sony lenses being sharp. That thing is just another level up from sharp.
You just made my day, because every live stream I've been mentioning my love for the 100mm STF, And yeah, because it's very unique in its own way, but the bokeh on it, the way it creates images, I feel like it's a really unsung hero when it comes to being an impeccable lens.
And it focuses close, so it's very useful as a product, photograph products as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my favorite least used lens.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that one. I try to bring it out as often as I can. Jason will always, Jason Etzel's another Sony rep that we have, and he's just like, you brought the 100? I was like, of course I did. It's amazing.
So we kind of ran away from the questions. Any other questions?
Yeah. Well, Entren did follow up, and he says, thanks for the answer, Neil. How do you compare Sony A1 to the A9? I guess many people would like to know your evaluation. Thanks.
In terms of high ISO noise, I've never really compared it. I'm happy with the A9 II at 3200 ISO. I'm happy with the A1 at 3200 ISO. I've never made a direct comparison. The A9 versus the A9 II, which then obviously will be to the A1 as well, is the second card slot is the slower.
Right, UHS 1 and UHS 2 for the A9,
one, yeah.
and then the A9 II has both UHS 2.
If you shoot fast burst rates, it slows the camera down as the camera tries to write to the card. And I've hit buffer problems there where it slows me down when I photograph dancers. You know, I have an Irish tap dancer dancing around, and you're just shooting bursts because the action is so fast. You can't just shoot individual shots. You're going to miss the peak moment. This is 20 frames a second and get the image. But then the camera slows down. So the A1 and the A9 II improved dramatically on A9 with the second card slot also being version 2. What is it?
UHS 2, yeah.
And then the other thing that the A9 II really improved over the A9 is the mechanical shutter. Using flash with A9, there's some weird delay with the shutter. So I love the A9 II for that. I specifically upgraded my camera on the 7200 with the A9 II for the mechanical shutter. And then how the A1 compares is A1 compares to A9 II and A9. The focus acquisition is just much faster. It's noticeably faster. The other thing is if you switch the A1 on, it's on. There's no delay in booting up. The other one is if you dial your aperture and shutter speed with the A9, still there's a bit of lag as you adjust the aperture. There's just that hint of a lag as it changes the digits. A1 instantaneous. It feels like a direct mechanical thing.
It's moving with you as if it's an extension of your arms, essentially.
And what I also enjoy is 400th of a second flashing speed. It's 2/3 of a stop faster than the A9 A9 II. If you go to crop mode, we have 21 megapixels. The maximum flashing speed becomes 500th of a second. Very useful.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, and there are lots of little differences that really separates the A1 from the A9 II, and the A9 II is better than the A9, obviously, in several ways. However, when I switch over to Sony, I bought used A9 bodies because used A9 body was half the price of a brand new A9 II. So I could buy two A9s for the price of a new A9 II. So at one point I had 4 A9s.
Wow.
And then I kind of sold it off and 9 2s. Yeah, so it kind of upgraded as it goes now.
Nice. Yeah, honestly, when it comes to in comparison the A9, A9 II, I feel like the A9 can definitely handle weddings. Obviously.
I still shoot with the A9, and I mean, it is... How old is this camera? 8 years?
Ooh, yeah, I would say... I don't know the exact year, but let me find out.
It still holds its own. I mean, this is in no ways a depreciated camera. There's 2 generations better than this, but I mean, if you can't create magic with this camera, then I don't know. Gotta do homework.
Train out, do a little bit more practice. It came out in 2017 back. It was announced on 19th of April.
So 6 years ago.
Yeah, and that's that's what the A7 III has, the same autofocusing system.
That throws everyone's time off, I think.
Yeah.
Real gap in history and memory there.
And actually, in relation to the conversation that we're having, we actually had a question from Cindy, who asked, how do you handle noise at high ISOs?
Okay, here's a trick. The default in Lightroom and Bridge, the sharpening is high and the noise reduction is set to 0. If you keep your sharpening high, you'll get artifacts. So I take my sharpening to 20 and I pull my noise reduction to either 25 or 30. So you lose a little bit of detail, perhaps if you really pixel peep, but the images look great.
I think the clients are going to be happy.
Clients are happy, I'm happy. So if I'm pulling my raw files, one of the first things I do is sharpening down to 20 only and noise reduction up to 25 or 30 depending on the ISO, and the images look great. So that's very simply how I use it. I guess it's not a very sophisticated way of handling the high ISO noise. Just in Lightroom or Bridge, ACR, just pull the noise reduction up, pull the sharpening down to 20, lower than the default.
So set the, well, you have the noise inside the camera set to normal, right? Or
that only affects the JPEGs. I shouldn't
roll.
roll.
You're right. Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
Because we are groups here. Shouldn't roll.
Exactly. Let's see here. We got another question as well. Let's see, from Dave. Wedding photography is not just in what the camera sees, but what you can see after the image is captured and how to enhance it in post. What applications do you use for post-processing? Very nice question there, Dave. Thank you.
This is going to be a disappointing answer. Very little. I don't use any plugins. I don't use any effects. I pull in the raw files. I bump up the shadow detail a little bit, pull down the highlight detail a little bit, pull up the vibrance a touch. Minor things that I adjust, and that is it.
Yeah.
I don't run any filters. I don't run any plugins. I don't run any effects. It's just pretty much straight out of the raw file.
It gets more complicated that way too.
For the blog and for wedding albums and for anything I post, or if a client orders an image, I do skin retouching, clone tool, healing brush, and portraiture imaging, portraiture to have a bit of smoothing that I run in a layer that I reduce opacity. So my post-production is perhaps disappointingly simple. Part of it is I don't have time to mess around with it. Okay. I'm busy. I have to have a fast workflow. The weddings have to get out. I don't have that luxury of messing around with it. So I have no effects that I run. I don't have... the word is now passing me. What people buy for Lightroom?
The filters and stuff like that, like the film simulations or something like that.
I have none of that.
Yeah. Honestly, it comes down to like the amount of work that you get, in terms of how many weddings and you edit everything yourself, right?
Yeah,
exactly. And even then, you're able to get the detail that you want, and honestly, it's most true to life. So
that for me is an important point, and you might argue that it's just the way I justify it, but the skin tones look good, the skin tones look natural, and I feel that the photographs will be timeless because it's not tied to a specific fad, a specific year.
Yeah, this is when putting in the whatever film simulation was really popular in the day. Yeah.
What's yellowish stained, tea stained look, etc.
Yeah, really flat and some other stuff. Yeah, I definitely lean towards the more true to life. I noticed that sometimes I'll pick up saturation just a little bit, but I think
you tweak a little bit, you sweeten it a little bit, but nothing crazy.
Right, exactly. Yep, and we had a comment here from Leslie Candy here, who said, for wedding, which lens is the best for mirrorless?
24-70, 2.8. I will shoot 90% of the day with that.
Right.
Really, it's the bread and butter lens. And then 16-35, I do need a wide lens, because if you hit a 24 people bridal party, you're going to need a wide lens.
Right.
Otherwise, you'll have to stand way back past the fence in the back to get everybody in.
Right. That's
Then
yeah.
70 to 200 really only gets work with the church, and then maybe a few of the portraits with the bride and groom.
Right.
I tend to work with just one camera and lens in my hand.
Yeah, I feel like that's a better way to do it.
I
I
have
think
the bondage harness that you wear with a thing on the other side. I had that for a while, but the crazy thing there is every time I slung the camera up, it would catch my nipple. My nipple raw after a day of slinging this thing up and down. It would just catch it every time.
Yeah.
So I just do one camera, one lens. I might keep one on my shoulder, but mostly it's just one camera, one lens that I have in my hands.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like one of those things where, I mean, carrying the two cameras, I think my back would slowly start to wear out and get more chiropractor appointments in. Awesome question. Thanks, Leslie. Let's see. Yeah, and honestly, guys, Neil's not just a wedding photographer. You've won an Emmy, correct me if I'm wrong, before for videography as well. So you have one of those somewhere in your studio, I'm sure.
I was on part of a team that won an Emmy for the best video that they created.
That's awesome.
For Major Baseball.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, if you guys want to expand into not just wedding photography, or we could, let's see, I have your website here, and if you want to direct me anywhere, Neil, let me know. But you do have a very wide range, as you said. Wedding photography takes a lot of different skills.
And I think part of this comes from, I fell in love with photography. I wanted to learn as much as I can, shoot as much as I can. And I think that in that way, I've never really specialized in anything because I want to do everything.
Right.
Next step back. So, and then I have my website set up that each section has a different level. So the headshots, if you click through the headshots, it is just, okay, click through on the logo.
Oh, sure.
The logo, that takes you back to the main site. Now click on the menu. You click on headshots. The menu now becomes only headshots. And a similar way, photography will only be product photography. So you live on just that level on the website. So it looks like I specialize in whatever section you find is on the website.
Wow, so this is actually really like how your website's designed. I didn't know this class, this live stream was going to end up being a session on understanding how to do website design.
Oh, the menu. This is all headshot stuff.
Right.
Text on this page is as your headshot photographer, etc., etc. But if you click through up on the logo, you go to the portrait level or product photography level, events. Click through on events.
Sure.
That's corporate events. So if you hover over menu, and galleries will be, I think at the moment I just have 2. I'm busy expanding to 3. Gotcha. So all of this is if somebody finds me via Google for corporate events, they're locked into this level. They don't really see anything else. So it looks like I specialize in just this one thing.
Oh, that's
same
really
with time lapse, same with portraits, same with whatever it might be. And then my wedding and bar mitzvahs and families are in a completely different domain, but it's the same idea is that every menu appears to be just as if I specialize in that.
Right. I mean, they're going to be focused on what they want to focus on, right? Whether it's headshots or anything else. So that's a great way to really design the website. That's awesome.
A lot of photographers make that mistake in that they show their landscapes and pets and everything else. Clients are not interested. They really want to see that one specific thing.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
Click through on portraits. Click through on portraits. The portraits level there. There you go. Now here it's a little more diverse. Expand the menu.
Sure.
So I have editorial, dance, fashion catalog. Now click through on dance. So I think there's like 15 photographs that are just dance. Yeah. And now look at the URL on the image. The scroll. The watermark.
Oh, on the photo. Right. Oh.
As you see, dance.photo. So all the photographs on this page has that logo, which is the domain that I bought that redirects to this page.
Wow.
So photographs float around somewhere on the internet or on Pinterest or wherever it might be. If somebody's interested in seeing where it came from, they can just type in the URL, they get through to this page,
right?
Which redirects to just this page.
That is a very highly efficient website.
So I've done the same for product photography. I've done the same for headshots. My headshots page is njheadshots.com, but if you go through on the URL, it's a much longer URL that's there for SEO purposes.
Ah, man.
So every page here in some way has a distinct URL that redirects to a very specific point on the website.
Wow, that's awesome. So if you guys have any questions about running Hotlink, even the website, oh my God, that's so cool. I mean, I'm pretty sure what you described as a mistake is the same for my website right now, because I know I need to update mine because I literally have landscape.
What is your you got to clean that up.
Yeah. This is definitely something that's been sitting here since 2020. And I definitely need to update. But yeah, when it comes to landscape, I just try to keep it one at a time and whatever. But yeah. But yeah. But this live stream's not about me. We'll talk later.
Information here for everybody.
Oh hopefully. Yeah. Well, yeah. If you have any critiques, I would love to hear it. Honestly.
Just don't hurt my feelings with critiques.
Yeah. I feel like critiques are really useful when it comes to at least improving yourself generally. You know, just as long as it's useful and not like it sucks. There's no way you could improve it sucks.
Questions?
Yeah, absolutely. We have let's see, a question from Elise here. She says, how can you capture the perfect candid photos at a wedding?
That is difficult. It's difficult to capture purely candid moments, I think. Obviously have a camera that's very responsive, but I think there's a cultural limitation as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you photograph an Indian wedding, they are all about family photographs. They will, if they see a camera, they'll get together for a photograph. I would say it's difficult getting a truly candid moment consistently at an Indian wedding because they want to be photographed. And even Jewish weddings, they all about the photographing the families and people together. So the moment they see a camera, they smile for the camera. Trying to get a candid shot of the little kid, the parent will take the kid and like smile at the camera, and you go, oh, "That's not the shot I wanted."
Yeah.
So I find that it's a real challenge getting a truly candid moment consistently at weddings, simply because people respond to the camera. Parents will have the child turn to the camera. So I don't know what advice I would give. Have a response to the camera that if you see something at the camera, it's just on the photograph. That's the one thing.
Yeah.
And that's where eye focus is brilliant. Because you can set the camera to a spot and it'll grab the eye, or just in general grab the eye.
Right.
Gives you a much higher chance of success.
Absolutely. Yeah, making sure that IAF is on and you're ready to hit that. Yeah.
Also where I think mirrorless is useful, you don't have to lift the camera up to your eye. You can just flip the little screen out and shoot from chest height.
Right.
So you don't have, this way you're pointing at the people and your eyes there. But if you pop it down and you sort of with the old twin lens reflex, you're working down here on your camera.
Right.
That's a lot more sort of...
A lot less, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like anytime a person looks at like a lens that's going in there, they just have to respond with a smile. I forget, there was a book out there. I think it was like the eye. I gotta have to double check back in terms of what it was. But yeah. I
become mean at weddings, I think, in a way, because let's say the bride and the dad are dancing, and I lift the camera to get responsive. People are like, oh, looking at the bride and the dad. The moment you lift your camera, some people will look at the camera and smile. That is not the shot.
Right.
So and go point and just go.
Yeah. I'm trying to keep it chill. Go look that.
Look at the brand. You got a job to do. I've got a job to do. Looking at the cameras.
I'm not here. Jeez.
I'm not here. Yeah. Ignore me.
Yeah.
More paper.
At least Silent Shutter is trying to do its thing, and it's a little bit less. Yeah.
Very useful for ceremonies and stuff like the groom reading his letter from the bride, and he's all in tears. You don't want clack, clack, clack DSLR going off. You want dead silence. Yeah, I think electronic shutter and mirrorless camera is very useful to just fall into the background and not be seen.
Yeah,
and not
I feel like with your choice of the A9 series and the A1, it's a stacked sensor, so there's going to be no distortion too. On top of that, everything gets reduced like from like the kind of the rolling shutter effect. You don't really get that with a stacked sensor.
Yeah,
and that's even with the A9 and the A9 too. But
so that's the case for getting good camera shots. Shoot mirrorless, shoot with a little flippy screen out, and shoot chest height or belly button height.
Yeah.
And silent shutter, obviously during a party, it's silent. It's irrelevant because it's noisy.
Yeah, just pretend you're reviewing your images. Like even use my thumb to hit the shutter so it looks like I'm just holding. Oh man, we had a follow-up question here. It was Neil, would you let us know some of your favorite portrait photographers? Thanks. Great question.
Favorite portrait photographers. Mark Seliger, I think, would be right up there as number one right now. His work is done for Rolling Stone. It's just always imaginative, always varied. So I would say Mark Seliger right now is my number one. I would have to look at my shelf here. I've got a whole bunch of books on my shelf. And then,
yeah. That's another place to get inspiration too, honestly. And yeah, let's see. Cool. So I think I do have a wedding question, but it's not so much towards photography, but videography. And this question was from Kamal. He said, will wedding videography be included? Yes, it will be. If yes, please comment on how to best handle audio recording.
How to best handle audio recording? Paranoia. You absolutely have to have backup audio. If you're photographing speeches, there has to be at least one other camera, preferably two cameras, to record it, because your audio has to be pristine. You can have less than ideal video, but if the audio is noisy or disturbing, you have nothing. So the audio is at least 50% of good video. So I think very important is get lavaliers, get little pocket audio recorders. Only makes a small one that just fits in.
Right.
And then, it's just
have backups to backups to backups. I would say, like, I have the Sony UWP-D27. That's a professional audio recorder, and that is a ultra high frequency kind of microphone. And there's an adapter where you could just attach it on the hot shoe, and it transfers that audio straight to it. But using an ultra high frequency radio microphone is way more reliable than I would say those 2.4 gigahertz kind of like radio frequency, just because you have a wider radio reception, so you're not going to get cut off by other electronics if it gets disconnected, and it's just more reliable. So UWP-D27 is a 2 mic input, and then you also have the 226. So definitely check those out to make sure, but that's just one of the mics you need to make sure, because I've definitely, and I felt horrible after, but I got in the way for the main like videography thing, but they still produced an amazing video after, because they let the audio while they were reading the vows and everything else was there. Put some B-roll, hide the fact that I got in the way, and it was saved.
Definitely with speeches, I will have what is that small Sony recorder? I have two of them. They kind of slip into the groom's pocket or one into the officiant's pocket, and then you still lavalier.
I'm forgetting which mic. I know Sony has a few just field recorders.
Yeah, it's
like
really tiny and flat, very slimline. Yeah.
yeah. This one is
But
what I use for
you
just
rely
general.
on one audio source. It's have multiple audio sources. That's the big trick.
Yeah, just make sure you're covered and you have at least 3 different audio inputs for the same thing.
Yeah,
Sure.
and it's specifically the saying, and I think it's very true for audios. 2 is 1, 1 is none. You know,
Right.
it's gotta have backups. It's gonna
Oh,
fail.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Either you forgot to check the battery or something. There's always something, but you always have the backup. And the same goes for cameras as well. I mean, that's why you have yours. But yeah, let's see. There was a follow-up question here. It says, I guess you use aperture priority setting for most of your wedding events. Is this right, Neil? Manual. I'm guessing. All the way.
100% on the camera.
Yeah.
Flashes either TTL or manual, depending on whether I move or the subject moves.
Right.
Manual, 100% the camera.
Yeah. I mean, with the newer flashes now, the HVL60RM2, that one has PTTL that works with the eye autofocus. So it works really well with TTL, or it's called PTTL. And it's using that distance from that eye autofocus to measure the output. It's really neat.
And it might seem contradictory that I would be insistent on shooting manual on the camera, but flash can be TTL or manual. But I feel if I shoot program mode or aperture priority or some automatic mode on the camera or auto ISO even, my ambient light varies and then my flash varies, and I don't know where I am. But if I'm fixed with manual, then my exposure is there, and then I can add a little bit of flash. I can match the ambient light with a flash, or if the available light's not wonderful, I can dominate it with flash. But manual on the camera gives me a fixed point.
Absolutely. And I mean, when you're trying to include more ambient light, you just tell the flash to be weaker and then adjust from there. So it's pretty neat. Good way to balance, because you never want to play the guessing game and troubleshoot while you're on a gig.
And as advanced as the cameras are, I shoot with them in a fairly simplistic way.
Right.
I've had people in workshops with cameras, and they've gone in and changed pretty much every custom function, and I have no idea what's going on. So I use the cameras, like I said, in a fairly obvious way, that the finger memory is there, and I don't have to really think about it.
Right, exactly. Like even with, I think eye autofocusing, that's one less thing I have to worry about, but setting the shutter speed and everything else in terms of exposure, I feel like I could definitely control more or have more fun during like a wedding and just like really focus on composition.
And I read an article, and this is decades back, some news photographer who also photographs events, one of the British photographer magazines, and he described about how he would practice jogging blindfolded and change film in his camera.
Oh my god.
So he could stop and think about it. He could actually do it blindfolded while jogging and change film. And is that your finger memory has to be that good. You have to know where your controls are. Right. You don't look down your camera. Oh, yeah. This is also nice about mirrorless. I'm not going on another sidetrack. Image preview, where the image pops up in the viewfinder or on the back of the LCD. I find this very useful, because if I photograph, let's say, families, I can photograph them. The image pops up for 2 seconds in the viewfinder, and I can see whether my flash is fired. I can see if somebody is not standing correctly or whatever it might be, or looking away. Yeah, so I can shoot, just turn a little bit and shoot. Okay, just move a little bit. So in this way, I keep the contact with them. Whereas if you do that, you break contact. So this just keeps you a little more in control and a little more on top of things. The image pops up in the viewfinder. I've got it.
Yeah,
and you have
that's a great point, honestly.
I like that part of mirrorless as well.
Yeah, because even not just on sunny days where you could still review the pictures to make sure the exposure's right, but having your like, there's a lot of more sneaky things you could do with the electronic viewfinder, whether it's like reviewing the image while you have it up in your eye and they're just thinking you're actually getting the shot ready. You're just making sure that they posed right, and it's just like, yeah, yeah, I dig that. But yeah, Neil,
Okay,
it's
next
already 6:54 p.m. It's almost been an hour already. Time flies. I still have questions for you though, if you have time.
I've got nothing going on this evening. We can stay as people here.
Awesome, love to hear it. Well, we have a question from Tracy here. Let's see, how to really cut back on gear so I can focus on my couple and getting great inspired shots in the zone, rather than the weight of fumbling with too much gear. That was a question. So I guess it was just more focusing and reducing the gear. So maybe the question would be,
I would say the camera and the 24 to 105 f4. The f2 point is useful for low light, but I think if you're photographing engagement sessions or families, 24 to 105. That covers everything. You get a nice tight portrait lens, you get wide, anything in between. And the Sony 24 to 105 f4 is, again, crazy sharp.
yeah,
Especially considering that it's a wide angle to telephoto zoom, and they tend to be soft at one end or the other. But the Sony lens is just spectacular. So I would suggest the Sony 24 to 105, and they're like not expensive. They're I think about 1,200 to 1,100 now.
right. Yeah.
Do you have a do lens? Yeah, they have a do everything lens. Obviously, you have backup in the car or just another camera with a 50 on your side. Just never just the one camera, but run around with one camera and a lens pretty much for most of those sessions.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think, would you trust that for like second photographers? Do you have any kind of prerequisite to look into getting a second photographer for your line of work, or anyone who's looking to be a second?
For a second photographer, I feel the 70-200 2.8 is essential.
Yeah.
Because while I'm photographing the bridal party, they need to be in there getting 2 people, 3 people, 2 people, 3 people, horizontal, vertical, cute little flower girl, guests on the side. They need to be able to pick things off at a distance.
Right.
I would say that as a second shooter, 70-200 is essential.
Absolutely. I mean, you're there to be supplemental to the wedding photographer and not be taking the same pictures as them, because they definitely got the shot.
Shooting over my shoulder, the wide angle lens, you're wasting my time. I don't need you there. I need the other shots very quickly, which is, if I tell a bridal party, just talk to each other, hang around, just joke around. I always tell them, give the bride and groom your best bad advice. Always gets a laugh, and then they goof around.
Yeah.
I'm shooting wide, I might come a little tighter, but I want the other photographer to pick couples or 3 people, get sensible kind of shots.
Gotcha. And honestly, that's a great point too, where you mentioned, supplementing your wedding. Is there, in terms of looking, or anyone looking to improve to eventually become a main wedding photographer, do you feel like do you look back at the experience? What are you looking for a second photographer?
Oh man, you're getting into a tricky subject here. I haven't always had the best of luck with second shooters.
Oh, same here. Trust me.
Just represent themselves. I look at the portfolio and I want to see variety. I definitely also want to see full weddings. So anyone can, from second shooting full weddings, can pull out a dozen images that look good. Because the day is presented for you as a photographer. So there's a cute little flower girl running around. Anybody can do that. Detailed shots of the flowers. The florist did all the work. Just take a detailed shot of that. So anybody can get 20 decent shots as a second shooter. So I want to see full weddings. I want to see your consistency.
Yeah, that's a good point too. It's honestly, I've had nightmares where I took on a second photographer, and the style was completely different from mine. And so I don't knock him for his style of photography, but when it was under my name, it had a very documentarian style, and I was just like, I'm not going to use a lot of these photographs. And that was a hard lesson learned on my end. But yeah, it's definitely good to look into those kind of things. We had a few comments just chiming in here with Anthony Tack. He said mirrorless wedding and wedding emoji there, and then he said exposure bracketing for Sony ISO brackets. I guess he's asking if you're using it.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Especially with mirrorless, where you have the exposure preview, you dial your settings, you can see the exposure preview. It's not that necessary. And then the way that I set the image to pop up in the viewfinder on the back of the screen, I can immediately see what I'm getting. It's not necessary. And then I'm shooting in RAW. And with the Sony A1, I have nearly 2 stops exposure latitude, overexposure.
Right.
I only have 1 stop overexposure latitude if I shoot medium RAW. But it would be rare for me to be out by a stop consistently.
Right.
I mean, you go, oh crap, I need to change something. Aperture ISO, shutter speed, something. Got to change it. Right. So I don't do aperture bracketing. Aperture bracketing is exposure bracketing. Exposure bracketing is something you would do if you do HDR for real estate photography or something like that. Mm-hmm. But for wedding photography, you're going to miss moments.
Right. Yeah. Be confident in your settings and everything else, and
you've got all the. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, RAW can definitely recover a lot. So, I mean, yeah, I would definitely trust that for sure.
I did a comparison when Sony brought in with a firmware the medium RAW on the Sony A1. Mm-hmm. I did a comparison in the highlight recovery, and I could pull back nearly a stop on the medium RAW, but I could pull back nearly 2 stops on the full RAW on the Sony A1.
Wow.
The image is unusable, overexposed, and you just pull that slider down and go, I got something here that still works.
Nice.
So yeah, I wouldn't bother with exposure bracketing.
Yeah, absolutely. But great question there, Anthony.
Sorry, these are all disappointing answers. It's all manual, no filters, no effects. Just straight for
keep it true to heart. We have one last question that was submitted in from the Eventbrite. And it's coming from Renee, who said, is being a second photographer a realistic career choice? I love assisting and getting the details and emotional shots of the guests reacting to the event. It is difficult to find a photographer that is looking for a permanent assistant.
A career choice as in a full-time career as your only income?
Photographer?
Probably not, because there's not enough money in it. You would have to have some other kind of full-time income, but you can make a fair amount of money as a very reliable, consistent second photographer that can make the other photographer's life much easier. Mm-hmm. And with that is, if the main photographer is busy with something, they'll tell you go do details or go photograph bridal party or go photograph the families or something. You'd be able to do it competently at the same level as the main photographer. So you have to be on the same level as the main photographer, even as a second shooter. And if you can do that and you can show your worth, you can have a viable income as a second shooter, but I doubt very much that you'd be able to make it as an only income.
Right. You'd have to be pretty happy with that secondary photography income. Yeah.
I shoot for other studios. I do second shoot for other people. But during the week, I do headshots. I do product photography. I do a whole range of other things, which helps me afford all these lovely toys.
Absolutely.
But, yeah. So I do love second shooting. If you can absolutely do it. There's a lot less pressure as a second photographer because the main photographer is involved with a timeline. If things run slow, you have to keep things on track. Second photographer, you kind of coast along a little more than that.
You're just looking at everything going like, ooh. I love being a second photographer though, because the main thing for that is, here's my memory card, and I go home and not have to worry about it. But yeah. But that was a great question. And Neil,
it's going to be difficult getting other photographers to allow you to use images, because it's the whole competition thing, and also it's you don't necessarily want photographs of your clients to be out there floating that you don't have control over as the photographer.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, because legally you have a lot of things to be obligated for for those kind of things. But yeah, Neil, thank you for joining us for this whole hour session for the live stream. I really appreciate your time and being able to have this discussion with us.
and I hope there was a lot of useful information, or at least a little entertaining.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, I learned a lot even just talking, even on website design. So I was very happy to have this conversation with you. I know you have a few things, like at least community wise, right? You have a Facebook group that you
I
have.
have yeah, and then I have the blog with about 1,000 articles and reviews and tutorial articles, the Tangents blog.
Nice.
Where-
So it still runs strong. Your blogging has not
So adding
stopped.
to-
A
yeah,
lot of research.
that's where my career started, is writing a lot.
Oh yeah. And
Your
if you guys have
opinion-
any last minute questions, throw them in now to kind of keep us here if you want. But how can we find those blogs there?
Go back to my website,
Sure. Give me
Neil.
minutes.
Yeah,
Whoop. All right.
okay, in the menu, go more, and right at the bottom, Tangents for Photographers.
There you go.
That's the largest part of my website, but it's kind of hidden away from clients because it's more for photographers.
Awesome. You even have video tutorials and everything.
There's an hour-long video tutorial on downsplash photography.
Wow. That's great. And honestly, you
there's-
could find him in the right below his title right there. It's neilvn.com. Okay, guys?
And as I said, there's 1,000 articles there on whatever I have opinions about, and I answer questions.
Awesome.
If you need to, no, I don't have a direct link to Facebook group there. Never mind. Oh, actually, I do. Scroll up.
Mhm.
No. Menu.
Mhm.
Oh, this is the mobile view. It looks different on the desktop view. On the desktop view, there's the social media icons at the top.
Oh, gotcha.
Facebook link there will take you to the Facebook group.
Let me see if it's... No.
Yeah, more the bottom here. If you scroll to the bottom, we're making people dizzy. Scroll to the bottom.
Uh-huh.
Go.
All the way to the bottom?
Yeah, go.
Hold on tight, guys. Ooh.
Okay, go up a little bit.
Mhm.
Go up a little bit. Go up a little bit. Go up a little bit. Go up.
Oh, here.
There we go.
Facebook.
Yeah, that'll be the Facebook group related to this blog.
Cool. Yeah, you could find it there, guys. But Neil, thank you again earnestly for joining me on the live stream and joining Adorama here and sharing your experience. It's been very eye-opening, and it was really great to have you on here, honestly.
Pleasure, man. It's good to hang out again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to hear you're doing well. And other than that, thank you guys for joining. I really appreciate your time, and thank you Adorama for hosting and being a perfect platform to talk with other photographers like yourself. And I want you guys to have an amazing day. All right.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Bye.